So, when we have the conversation about high res audiophile grade components, we have to talk about several different things. What is the customer listening to as far as a file format? What is their habit or lifestyle when it comes to listening to music? And what components can deliver on the resolution? Well, on today's conversation on Connected, we're talking to product experts, both Josh Bowen and Dave McKinnon, joining us from JVC Kenwood. And we're talking specifically about their Kenwood eXcelon reference product and how it delivers on audiophile grade performance. This is CMA Connected, brought to you by Sirius XM, all about Kenwood eXcelon reference. And it starts now. Welcome, everybody, to another CMA Connected, brought to you by Sirius XM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Yep, we're at that time of the year where we're going to get into the nitty gritty. We're talking about the critical listener, those who have a passion for making sure that they are listening to music at the highest potential performance possible. Well, Kenwood answers the call with a suite of different products that deliver on that promise. But to understand how this works, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper and break it into parts. First, starting with high resolution. Now, I know you've seen the logo here and there, but if you don't really understand what that means, you've come to the right show. Josh, welcome again to Connected. What are we going to be covering overall on today's episode?
Hey Ben, good to be back as always. So today's episode I'm actually really excited about because we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. We're going to talk about things in a deeper format than we probably have historically. So like you said earlier, high res audio, what that means and how that breaks down to the components inside of the receiver is definitely a topic of today's conversation. But there's a lot of other things that we're going to bring into light in that same conversation, right? Different forms of codecs, advantages that we have that we offer with how our customers can get to that music, whether it's from wireless platforms or file storage on external devices. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
All right, Josh, we're definitely going to get to unpacking all these details, but first, an opportunity for our partner, Sirius XM, to remind you why it's always an amazing add on sale. And when we come back, let's talk codecs and high res audio. Don't you dare go away.
Hi, Paul Truman here with Sirius XM. We reached out to some of our partners in the industry, and here's what they had to say.
I can't say more or enough about just what it means to have our unit working with Sirius XM. It's like we're there now.
The Sirius XM service is something consumers want, right? So it's Paul.
That allows a consumer to listen to either podcasts, entertainment, sports, all at their fingertips. It's all about engagement, and that's what Sirius XM provides.
Sirius XM is a huge component in a vehicle nowadays. Consumers expect that technology to be available both in our OEM system as well as the aftermarket upgrades that they're applying to their vehicle.
Alpine and Sirius XM, through our electronics, are able to offer the consumer on the aftermarket side Sirius XM 360L, which is an expanded platform for Sirius XM. And it's really been a beneficial relationship for us with Sirius XM.
As a dealer, just remember, we don't compete with anybody else. We are absolutely one of the best profitability accessories you can add to any head unit that is Sirius XM ready.
And welcome back to the show. Before the break, we had Josh on here talking about the itinerary of today's conversation. So let me preface this. Audiophile grade components have been around for a long time. The difference, however, are two things. A, the era of digital music formats, and B, the situation of which we're installing said equipment, albeit in a vehicle, which has also changed tremendously. So we're definitely going to cover both things. But first, let's get a better understanding of what we're dealing with. And the first part of our conversation is going to be around the topic of high resolution audio or high res audio. So Josh, let's start with you. Help us understand the importance of that little logo that's on, some of your higher end stuff called high res.
Yeah, Ben. So high res audio, we've actually talked a little bit about this before too, right? That logo and what that means to us here at Kenwood. Just as kind of a quick recap, if you will, that's something that your products have to be thoroughly evaluated through a Japanese audio society, right? So this is like a governing body that actually tests your products to make sure that it can exceed, or in some cases meet, I guess, but in ours exceed some of the standards that they require for you to get that label on your box. The other important piece to that too is making sure that when you're designing your system with components that all meet those expectations so that you can deliver a high-res audio experience. But after that, it comes to the question of how do we get our high-res audio music? And that's something I think is really important.
Now, as mentioned, and to join us on this high-res adventure today, we have someone that, well, He's pretty much somebody everybody knows with our industry, and we're happy to see he's in a new role. And joining us today is David McKinnon. Dave, high-res audio is something that, is a part of our lives and will be moving forward because we're talking about digital media. But can you give us a breakdown a little bit, or maybe some insight from a technical aspect for those who are a little bit more savvy?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, pretty honored to have this new role. So, talking about high-res audio, the standard, like Josh mentioned, is that there's audio content up to 40 kilohertz. But what I think is even more important is that the equipment used to create high-res audio recordings is better than the stuff that we used previously to make CD quality. The D to A converters and A to D converters are clearer, they add less distortion, and there's a lot less noise. So when a music engineer layers different tracks together to make a song, we don't end up with a lot of hiss in the background. The result is it's a much more pure experience. It's like being in the recording studio, hearing what the engineers heard.
All right, so now that we have a better understanding of what high-res audio is all about, let's talk about the practical application here. So I guess we'll talk about this in two parts. The first part being Bluetooth, because we all know Bluetooth is incredibly handy, it's practical, and we all have access to it. So for the listener that, is listening to their music through a Bluetooth connection, what is the expectation? What is the performance standard that we can deliver on when it comes to the quality of that audio?
Yeah, Ben. So I think most of us would probably agree that we live in a wireless society, right? Everything that's been created has been redesigned to have some form of a wireless format. Now, when we look at Bluetooth, we look at a wireless connection that happens from our cell phone to our receiver. Something that we do, though, to try to take that step to the extra mile is in our eXcelon reference products, we actually introduced LDAC to create that better listening experience from a wireless platform. Now, what's really cool about LDAC is that actually takes that streaming rate up to 990 kilobytes per second at 96K 24-bit resolution. So this means that if you have an LDAC-enabled device, which primarily will be your Android cell phone, sorry for the iPhone customers, I myself am in that category, but if you have that LDAC-enabled device, you remember to turn that setting on, you can stream at a true wireless high-res audio format, which I think is a really exciting feature to have. And it's something that's incredibly important to your audiophile grade customers.
Yeah, Josh talked about LDAC, and LDAC is what's called a codec. And basically, it's a way of compressing audio information so they can transmit it over a bandwidth limited connection. So we don't have a ton of airspace when trying to send information from the phone to the radio. So LDAC does a much better job than some of the other formats like AAC in delivering great quality sound. It's almost as good as CD quality, whereas some of the other ones are kind of like an old MP3 file.
Now, I'm not going to lie, Josh and Dave, I'm probably a little jelly at this moment because you mentioned that LDAC currently is only available through Android or certain Android platforms. And Josh, I am in the same boat. I am an Apple iPhone user. So is there any hope for me to be able to get some high quality, high resolution sound in my car?
So the good news is, Ben, there is hope for customers like you and myself, right? Customers that fall into that Apple side of life. Now, Apple actually released something somewhat recently called Apple Lossless, or as some people refer to it, ALAC. Now, what's great about this is for your Apple customers, they have the ability to experience lossless audio through Apple Music in their device. Now, this is something that's accessed from a setting within the phone. So much like LDAC, you do have to go into your iPhone to turn this setting on. But once you activate that, then you open that up, the ability to have that great experience with Apple Music. Now, something that's really important to know about, though, on this is it does differentiate based off of a wireless or wired connection. And I'm sure the majority of customers out there will be using wireless Apple CarPlay. So for those customers, they do have the ability to experience a lossless form at 16-bit 44.1K resolution. However, if you have that audiophile customer and they're looking to take that up a notch and get it into a high-res lossless format, that's where the ability to switch to a wired Apple CarPlay connection comes in as an advantage. So not every receiver on the market has the ability to do both. And one thing I really love about our products is that you can switch from wireless to wired based off of a connection type. So when we go to that wired connection, we look at that much like we would a USB or a solid state drive, right? We have that wired connection, which is going to take up those sample rates. So in this case, we could actually see up to 24-bit, 192 kilohertz resolution. And that's all accessed just by turning on that setting in the iPhone and listening to our music through the Apple Music app.
Yeah, Josh, you're absolutely right. We all take everything with us and we all expect it to work wirelessly. Or, like you said, if we want a little bit better performance, a wired connection to our phone improves quality. There's another way, though, to listen to our music, and that's good old fashioned putting MP3, WAV, FLAC, or even DSD files on a USB memory stick. Here, our only concern really is storage size. I mean, we could put a ton of MP3s, but they sound terrible. We could put WAV files, which are uncompressed, but they're really big. So the most popular one right now is probably FLAC files. They've got really good compression, and they decompress to be perfect copies of the original. But there's one more. That's DSD, like I mentioned. You want to talk to people about DSD?
Yeah, DSD is the one that's somewhat controversial, right? So the big advantage is it uses a 1-bit signal to sample the audio at very high rates. In some cases, 2.8 to 5.6 megahertz, right? And that translates to huge files. So if we're using like a USB, for example, the odds of us getting a whole album on a smaller USB are pretty slim. So in this format, a lot of people would typically have like a solid state drive that they connect to our receiver to access these file types. Now, the big advantage for your DSD customers is that a lot of them refer to this as more of the analog listening experience, and oftentimes I hear them talk about this in the same aspect of going home, putting a vinyl on the player, and then listening to that in their really good home audio system. And DSD format is what they claim brings them that experience in the car. Now, what's really cool, though, is there's not a lot of products on the market that are compatible with DSD. However, in our eXcelon reference line of products, we do have that fancy little label that's on the box or in the owner's manuals, so that those customers that desire that form of codec can see that, acknowledge it, and help them in their buying decision to know that they purchased the right product to cater to their needs. So I think having DSD is a huge advantage in the Kenwood line of products.
Well, I hope you're enjoying this conversation as I am, because this was deep about all sorts of different digital files and media files that our customers are listening to. But there is that one flip side I don't want to miss out on, and that is the fact that years ago, the audiophile reference grade system, when it came to the source unit in particular, was a pretty much a stripped down high quality source unit. But these days, let's face it, so many things have changed as far as convenience, safety features that come in vehicles, and our customers today do not want to compromise. So, having said that, how do Kenwood units address this by creating that audiophile grade experience without missing out on some of those creature comforts our customers also want?
So that's a great question, Ben, and arguably one of my favorite topics to discuss when we're talking about Kenwood products. Now, by this point, hopefully everyone's got a great understanding of some of the technologies and some of the products that exist within our products to help cater to those audiophile type customers. But the other side of that too is, what advantages do we bring to the table in addition to those high-res audio components and those different forms of codec that we can access? And that lies in some of the technologies and features that exist, right? My personal favorite is to talk about some of the tuning capabilities that exist within our products. And that one goes hand in hand with that audiophile type customer. Having receivers like our 10.1s that have a built-in parametric EQ, time alignment, a lot of crossover point adjustments, and the ability to cater this and bring everything into one centralized tuning station is pretty awesome. But when you also add some really unique features to that product, it's the icing on the cake. For example, the ability to have wireless mirroring for Android, which again, keep in mind, Android customers are also the ones that would be utilizing that LDAC function that we talked about earlier. So they have the ability to wirelessly mirror. Samsung devices even have a really cool feature called DeX, and the processors in our receivers are fast enough that we can actually utilize DeX at the same time as a wireless mirroring type platform. Outside of that too, though, I mean, you look at some other great technologies that exist, like three-way crossover mode, HDMI inputs, 4 camera inputs on some of these products, and so much more. The main goal behind this is having the understanding that although the receiver is packed full of audio quality features, it's also packed full of some really great technologies to help bring that product home and make it a really easy buying decision for your customers.
And there you have it, both Josh Bowen and Dave McKinnon coming and joining us today from Kenwood. And I hope you got out of it what I did as well. And that is a really good explanation of what is happening in real time when customers are coming in, looking for compatibility, finding equipment that suits their needs, but at the same time provides the form factor and the features that, whether they want to admit it or not, are a great added benefit when it comes to investing in this type of gear. Now, if you want more information on any of the products or technologies that we talked about on today's show, I do recommend you head on over to the official website. We'll put that on the screen right now. And if you're in Canada or US, make sure you reach out to the JVC Kenwood team to find out how to best become a Kenwood dealer. Now, a takeaway from me, one thing that Kenwood has certainly done, and it is absolutely not deniable, is that they have taken the time to accommodate whichever type of listening customer you have coming to the store. I'll take, for instance, the type of formats. Every single format imaginable and is currently available to even listen to can be played on these units. So if you have that customer that is an Android customer, plays FLAC files, no problem. DSD, we got you covered. Apple lossless, absolutely. And I love the fact that both the wireless option as well as the wired option are both available. This is a big plus. Add to that stuff that we didn't talk about on today's show, like the rest of the Kenwood eXcelon line when it comes to HighRes certified amplifiers and speakers, and not to mention every single source unit out there with the compatibility with Maestro. Because let's face it, it's great that we're talking about features, but if you can't integrate into the vehicle, we're no further ahead. That's it for this CMA Connected, brought to you by Sirius XM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.